The next one says it's headlined with things your inner child might need to hear. And then what your inner child might need to hear is your coping mechanisms were brilliant adaptations to your environment that helped you survive, and it's safe to let them go now. This is kind of similar. It's a kind of another way of saying the same thing. The thing to get in this, though, is that your adaptations, your survival adaptations, are brilliant. That's a hard thing to accept when you're the adult playing out of those early adaptations look like sabotage. It's very hard to get to see how these are brilliant adaptations to get that I needed to survive. But you almost have to see it in that way, because if you don't, you'll just be at war with yourself. You will be trying to beat yourself into being something that you're not. And continuing to reinforce this idea of that there's something wrong with you and that you need to do something to correct it, which is a perpetuation of what you set up when you were a kid. You know, we set up these things because we can't face that our parents are actually the problem. You know, like if you have a parent that's beating you, like that's an extreme, but if you have a parent that's beating you, like as an adult now, you can kind of go, what sort of person would do that, you know? Like for example, my father slapped me in the face one time when I was probably 6, you know, out of nowhere, right? He'd never hit me before that I could remember. I'd seen him hitting my siblings because, you know, I grew up in the 60s. That's what people did. They hit their kids. It wasn't a big deal. Everybody hit kids back then. Teachers, random strangers could do it, you know, if they had just cause kind of thing. So anyway, I had done something with that, and I'd angered my father without realizing it. And he called me out and said, you know, did you do this thing? And the way he said it, I knew I sensed I could be in trouble here. So the way he phrased it, it was like being in court and being asked a yes/no answer and not giving a yes/no answer. So he kind of said, did you do A, B, and C? And I went, well, no, I did E, F, and G or something like that. Anyway, out of nowhere, you know, he just, bam, right across the face, right? Now, at the time, I think even at the time I thought, well, that's uncalled for. Steady on. I mean, I was crying immediately, but mostly I was shocked, you know. Now, as an adult, I can kind of go, my father, you know, a grown man hitting a 6-year-old child like that in the face, that says a lot more about him than it does about me. But I wasn't like that. You know, as a kid, I was like, wow, I've done something really wrong. I've done something really wrong. I've really screwed up here. It's me. It's not him. You know, well, part of me was going, yeah, that's. So to kind of, if I probably did develop all sorts of coping strategies to never get hit again, and I don't think I ever did get hit again. But then, you know, he died a couple of years later anyway. The beginning of changing those coping mechanisms, coping strategies, is seeing them for what they are and going, there's logic here. My adult irrational behavior has good reasons. There's a good reason why I'm behaving irrationally. I just can't see it. And you won't see it if you start off by going, it's wrong. You'll just perpetuate this thing of there's something wrong with me. I'm just, you know, you're kind of doing it to yourself then. You're like, oh no, there's something wrong with me and I'm just screwing up here all the time. So that's the first thing, to recognize they're brilliant. These survival mechanisms are brilliant. And you know they're brilliant because you survived, you're still here. And the next thing is I can let go of them. Now that's not that easy to do. I know in this meme it sort of goes, oh, and then just let go of them. It's not that easy. But it starts with recognizing them, that these are brilliant these are brilliant strategies that I needed to survive. And how do I get them down? They're very similar to, you know, in the 80s and 90s, they were discovering Japanese soldiers who'd been stuck on Pacific islands, and they didn't know the war was over. And anyone who tried to tell them that was viewed as an enemy and got shot at. And the only way they could get them to accept it was to go and find their original commanding officer and get them to go, yeah, the war's over. And it's a little bit like that. We program these things into ourselves to survive. So they are charged with life and death energy. You know, it's almost like we take a part of ourselves, put it off to one side. Now you make sure I'm never creative again. I'm never adventurous again. I'm never whatever. And you know, you've got full autonomy. Just make sure I never make this mistake again. And then we forget about it and we grow up, you know. And this thing is still going. So if we suddenly, you know, if we develop agoraphobia, we can't leave the house, or we kind of go, oh, that's terrible, it's really messing up it's really cramping my style here. I really want to go and travel the world, but I'm terrified every time I do anything. Just going, oh, well, you know, oh, I've discovered I have a mechanism that prohibits me from being adventurous. Well, I'm just going to stop that. I'm just going to let that go. It doesn't work, because that part of you is like, it's not been, you can't de-escalate it. You can't you know, it's like you have to get the original commanding officer back. And the original commanding officer was life and death, you know. So it requires a lot of energy, the same kind of energy that it was charged with. That's why people go through catharsis, you know, they change when they go through catharsis. And that's because it's a big deal, you know. There's a huge amount of energy at those times. I'm not saying you need to go through catharsis. I'm just saying that's like an example of how it unlocks, you know. What I have found, a more gentle way of doing that is to recognize that it's trying to protect you. It's trying to keep you alive. Or to recognize that and to begin to get into a dialogue with it. So it's almost like you can't find the original officer to rescind the orders. So you have to kind of get it, you know, put an armchair on the beach on the Pacific island and go, yeah, I understand you don't trust me, but let's talk anyway. Because the thing is, these parts of us have been isolated for a long time. And what I've found is they like to talk and they like to be heard. Because what they're used to from you is being made wrong and being told to shut up. You know, like, so let's say you have borderline agoraphobia, but you want to go on holiday. As you get closer to the holiday, that part of you that's been told to keep you alive will be going, danger! We're in grave danger. Something terrible is going to happen if we leave the house. We can't be adventurous. Now, if you booked the holiday and paid for it, and you find yourself getting more and more anxious, you don't want to hear that voice. You want to go, shut up. Stop with the anxiety. I want to enjoy my holiday. But it doesn't hear that. And it's just used to you denying it and suppressing it. So if you recognize that it's helpful and that it's trying to keep you alive, and then you don't have an agenda, you're not trying to do it so you can go on holidays, but you're going, tell me all about it. Slowly it starts to come out of the forest. Slowly it creeps forward and it starts to tell you its sad, pathetic story. And you have to be okay with hearing it, you know, and listening to it. And then you have to develop a relationship with it, this part of you. You know, like we talk about the inner child. In my experience, there isn't inner child. It is not singular. There are many freeze-framed parts of us inside with different agendas, different programming, and it's a process of befriending them and helping them to come to you when they're triggered rather than take you over, which is what happens. They take you over. And you have to, like any friendship or any relationship, it's not just about talk. It's not like, oh yeah, tell me all about it. It's about, what can I do? What can I do to make it easier? And they might say, well, I want a bowl of ice cream, or I want you to buy me a teddy bear, or I want you to read me a story, or I want whatever. And for me, anyway, it's like, if it doesn't make any difference, I don't do dangerous things and I don't do things that are damaging to me. But if it doesn't make much difference, I'll do it. And I'll do it because I want to help foster the relationship. I want them to trust me. I much rather them to come to me and say I'm anxious or I'm scared or I'm vengeful or I'm angry or whatever, than to be taken over by them, which is what they do, don't they? And then you kind of go, oh, why did I say that to that person? Why did I snap like that? Why did I snap at that person? Or why did I thought I was going to the party and then suddenly I found myself back at home. How did that happen? And it's like, well, that's because they took you over, because it was too triggering for them. It's too, I don't really like that word triggering. It's a bit buzzwordy, but it was too confronting. So through getting a relationship with them, making friends with them, hearing what their voice, and because really what's really happening when you do that is you're filling in the gaps in your parenting. It's another way of thinking of it. But thinking of it like that can be a bit challenging, but that is what's happening. You're parenting yourself. You're parenting the parts of you that didn't get parented. And you're not making them wrong. You're encouraging them to tell you what the problem was and is, and to begin to demonstrate to them. Because you can get into negotiation with them then. When you've began to get their trust, then let's say you want to go on a little trip. You can go, well, we went on the trip, we got through it. Yes, you were anxious, but here we are and we survived, we lived through it. So maybe we're not in as much danger as we feel when we are a little bit adventurous. So it's like a process of gathering evidence that is the balance or the counter or the opposite of the evidence that you got when you were a kid of, I mustn't be adventurous or it's going to be catastrophic for me. And you're sort of building up a body of evidence of doing the thing that it sort of felt like, oh no, we can't never do that. If we do that, we'll be destroyed. So little by little. So yeah, it's not an easy, just let them go. You can try, but in my experience, they don't listen. That's just you flapping your gums. You could be saying you like them or you don't like them. Doesn't work. It seems like slow negotiation and trust building. And it's not so like you're trying to unify the parts or you're trying to get rid of them or disappear them or anything like that. It's, in terms of consciousness, it's like accepting that all parts of you on the inside are valid, even though some parts are more conscious than others. All parts have a place and there's no hierarchy inside, and that you want all parts to move forward in consciousness. That's the thing to aim for.